Yo, what's up, Miami Dolphins fans? Welcome into Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. Hopefully everyone is having a good early Tuesday, and thank you for making us a part of your Tuesday afternoon. We have a lot of fun things to talk about on today's live show. We'll talk about free agent targets. We'll talk about ESPN's most recent NFL mock draft and which two players, because it was 2 rounds, went to the Miami Dolphins. We'll also take a look at some Dolphins roster moves they could make that would create big amounts of cap space. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on this fine February 4th. And as we always do, start it off. Shout out your city for me right now down in the comment section. Let me know where the real ones are watching from. I see a couple good friends of mine in the chat here. Ty Man the Buckeye, Robbie Ralph, Tim, Wasim Khan. Robbie's watching from West Palm. Time Man is in Ohio. Wasim, as always, is in Irvine, California. Kelly is in Bradenton. I don't know if I've heard of that one. Hopefully I'm saying that right. The Sicilian Italian says Fairly. Danny is in Arizona. Arizona, where his Barry B is located as well. So couple real ones watching from Arizona. Appreciate all of you. It's going to be fun. A lot to talk about today, man. It really is. Warwick, Rhode Island is where John Bernardo is watching from. D.C., Stephen. Bradley is in Iowa. William is in Georgia. Baxley, to be more specific. Man, such an intriguing time in the NFL. I know we are in a little bit of a dead area, if you will, surrounding the Dolphins. We're still about 4 weeks away from NFL free agency. It is 4 weeks, though, so we are a month away from free agency picking up and beginning. But we do have the Super Bowl this upcoming Sunday. And the month of February is a little slow for the NFL. You get the Super Bowl this weekend, but then you get about 2 weeks of it being very, very quiet, very slow, not a lot of intrigue, and then you get the last week and a half of February picking up intrigue, free agency, a lot of rumors, and then the first couple of weeks of March gets really, really intriguing with free agency beginning, and then you have another little 4-week period of dead time before the NFL draft at the end of April really picks up, but we're still bringing you content every single day. Shout out to everybody spamming where you're watching from. But speaking of NFL free agency in about a month, who is your favorite free agent target for the Miami Dolphins? Let me know. Who, when you think about what Miami should do in the first 2 weeks of March, who should they target in NFL free agency? Who should it be? Who should it be? Got any names for me? We'll talk about some free agents on today's first segment. But let me know if y'all got any free agents that come to the top of your mind and are like, dang, the Dolphins really, really should try to go after them. I see some people saying cut Bradley Chubb. We'll talk about that. It's also the pinned comment and live poll on today's show. Danny says Myles Garrett. Well, he would have to be a trade. Matt says we need O-line. We have a lot of O-linemen that we will discuss on today's show. So stay tuned for that, Matt. First segment, actually, we'll be discussing free agent targets, and a lot of them are offensive line. What's up, Skeppy? What's up, Skeppy? How you doing? Every Noodle says you wouldn't say no to Hufanga. Safety from San Francisco, 25 years old, coming off major injury. But, yeah, backup quarterback from Steven. That's certainly a need. We talked about one option for Miami on the episode we posted this morning, if you haven't watched already. Marcus Mariota. He was linked to Miami for NFL free agency by Adam Schefter. We'll look to see what other people are saying here, but I do got to show some love to 2 of our sponsors on today's live show. One of them being Game Time. Game Time is the best way to buy your tickets, whether you're going to a sporting event, comedy show, theater, doesn't matter. Get your tickets with Game Time. And when you download Game Time, use code ChatSports when signing up to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only, but use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. It is first purchase, terms apply, but get started with Game Time today. They have so many great features that make purchasing your tickets even easier. But we are also sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And with the big game approaching this Sunday, make sure you get started with Prize Picks. Don't miss out on the last game of the football season. And Prize Picks is actually offering more than half a passing yard for Patrick Mahomes. It's a free square on Prize Picks. So all you got to do is pair up one other stat projection with that Mahomes half a yard, and you can win cash. Take advantage of the last football game of the season. Download the app and use code CLNS when you sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, as we move along here in the pre-show process, should the Miami Dolphins cut Bradley Chubb? He is having a $29 million cap hit this season. He did not play in 2024. Miami obviously gave him a large contract after trading with the Denver Broncos to acquire Chubb when he was just 26 years old. Chubb is getting much more closer to the 30-year-old age mark, has a high contract. If you cut him post-June 1st, you have $19 million extra in cap space. Remember, you get 2 moves to designate post-June 1st. So hypothetically, you could cut Terron Armstead and Bradley Chubb, designate both of them post-June 1st, and use that cap space in early NFL free agency rather than late NFL free agency. You get 2 of those moves. Chubb would be one of them, saving you $19 million. Terron Armstead would save you $15 million. So you'd get $34 million in cap space if you moved on from those 2 players. We'll talk about if Miami should do that later on in the show. But what is your thoughts on Bradley Chubb specifically? Type C if you should cut him. Type K if the Dolphins should keep him. Now, I will say this. If Miami ultimately keeps Bradley Chubb, you can bet they will restructure his contract because Chubb will not play in 2025 with a $29 million cap hit. He will either be restructured or flat out cut/traded post-June 1st. William and Danny both saying cut. Matt is labeling Trey Smith as a free agency target. Steven's saying cut. Bradley says we're Brock Purdy, Iowa State. Draft QB Iowa State like Breece Hall and Dave Montgomery. I must be a big Iowa State guy, Bradley. Every says Chubb has too high of a contract not to cut. That's kind of where I lean, if I'm going to be honest. Tom says only if they sign Garrett. Well, you'd have to trade for Myles Garrett. Danny and Trinia says cut. T. Lee says K. Michael McCormick says C. Cut. I think they should cut him. I don't want to cut him. It would make me upset to cut him. But, man, I think you got to. Trade Chubb for Myles Garrett. Chubb and a third for Myles Garrett. That wouldn't get it done. You'd have to send first-round picks to get Myles Garrett. You could trade Bradley Chubb and the 13th overall pick. That's what you could do. Yeah, cap space is an issue. That's for sure. 505 in the house from Adam. Shout out to you. Always injured for Michael. Oh, we got our super chat on today's show. Let's get this one pulled up, and then we'll start getting into potentially the start of today's actual videos. Shout out to my guy, Wasim Khan, for getting the party started. We'll show it on here once it logs in here in just a second. Yeah, I mean, $19 million is a lot of money. And that is the serious question when you talk about if it's worth cutting Bradley Chubb or not. Obviously, when we last saw Bradley Chubb in 2023, he was terrific. He played 16 games. He got hurt in that Week 17 game against the Baltimore Ravens. He had double-digit sacks. He was having an excellent year with Vic Fangio. The only issue is that he had a catastrophic knee injury. His knee injury was not just one torn ACL. It was an ACL, it was an MCL, it was a little bit of ligaments as well. It was like a 3 different ligament injury for his knee. So it's a pretty significant injury. And there's no guarantee Bradley Chubb will return and play well and look like the Chubb that we know. He hasn't played in a full 2 years almost by the time the season rolls around. And when you have so many roster holes to fill, and edge being a spot that needs to be addressed because the Dolphins pass rush ranked in the bottom 5 in the National Football League last year in sacks per game, sack percentage. The pass rush wasn't good. So, yeah, you can use Bradley Chubb returning, but when you think about having to overhaul the safety room, adding more on the interior offensive line, the $19 million might just be too good to pass up because you look at what last year was, and it's like, well, Bradley Chubb wasn't even on the roster last year. So it's not like you're losing a player. You already know what life is like without Bradley Chubb. So why not just use the 19 mil? It's a give or take. It's a give and take. Shout out to Wasim Khan with the $10 super chat. Appreciate you, Wasim. This season flew by. Completely agree. It's up to the Eagles to save us from the Kermit Kelsey and mid-Taylor Swift. Now it's hockey, basketball, and then 3 months of boredom. Trey Smith is going to be a Bear. LOL. Cut Chubb. I do think Trey Smith is likely going to either be a New England Patriot or Chicago Bear, if you're asking me. Those two teams have a shit ton of cap space, and they both have a massive need at guard, so I would expect one of those two teams to throw $20+ million at Trey Smith, which is what we will talk about in just a second. Appreciate you, Wasim Khan, for sending a $10 super chat to get the party started today. And if we want to get the show started today, hit that thumbs up icon. We got 72 people watching, only 20 likes. You know what? I'm not going to ask for too much today. Can we just get 10 more likes? Can we get to 30 likes? Once we get to 30 likes, we're going to get started with today's show. We're 9 away. Hit that thumbs up icon. Would be greatly appreciated. We put out a lot of content here, so hitting that thumbs up icon while we're live helps us out a ton, shows YouTube that you like the content that we're bringing. So help us out by hitting that thumbs up icon because we do have a loaded show on today because 4 segments, as we have been doing all off season long. First one, we'll look at the Dolphins free agent targets from ESPN's top 50 list. We're only going to look at who I think they could target in the top 50. Then we're going to also kick it to ESPN because Matt Miller released a 2-round NFL mock draft. I'll look at the 2 prospects Miami had drafted to them. We'll talk about big moves that Chris Grier could make in the next 4 or 5 weeks to create cap space, and we'll round it out, as always, with a Dolphins Q&A. So if you want to get your questions loaded up already for that Q&A, use hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat like Wasim Khan. But unlike Wasim, make sure you ask a question because he kind of made a statement. I guess he said cut Chubb and Trey Smith. So maybe Wasim Khan's $10 Super Chat can make it onto the show. But if you want to get your questions loaded, before we get into that, let me know. I got to make sure what's it called? I got to get my dinner order in. All right, sorry, I got to get my dinner order there because I'm a late night heat report. All right, we did get over 30 likes. So, Justin, you know what? I think it's time to get into the first segment, which is all about NFL free agents that Miami can target. Let's do it. NFL free agency is just about a month away, and on today's show, we are going to look at some Miami Dolphins free agent targets. ESPN put out a list of their top 50 free agents, and I am going to look through that list, and I picked out 6 guys that I think Miami could ultimately target in NFL free agency. We're not looking at it a lot. We're just looking at the people from ESPN's list, but I do want to remind people on what I believe the biggest needs are for the Miami Dolphins, because when you look at the list that we're going to show, most of the players are positions on here because interior offensive line, safety, interior defensive line, backup quarterback, and off-ball linebacker 2 are my 5 biggest needs for Miami, and I think it's in that order. You got to completely overhaul your left guard and right guard. You got to completely overhaul your safety room because I think it should be letting Javon Holland walk and replacing Jordan Poyer. These can be interchangeable, but these are the top 2 without a question in my book. But it's not going to be easy when I look at this list either, because as we currently sit, Spotrac is projecting the Miami Dolphins to be negative $15.8 million in cap. Now, they do have 6 weeks until that free agency league year to get under the cap, which means they are going to make roster moves in the next month and a half or so to get compliant with NFL rules and regulations. You could see cuts, trades, potentially contract restructures, but the Dolphins right now don't have a lot of cap space to work with, which is really going to limit their ability to spend in free agency. But before we finally get into some of these free agent targets, I do want to let y'all know that we are in a February-like battle. It's a shortened month here in the month of February, but we are in the lead for likes between our AFC East channels. We just launched the Jets Report and the Bills Breakdown. Patriots Today have always been around, and they've always been behind us. They're way lower, but we hold the lead. Hit that thumbs up icon on this video so we can continue to take a commanding lead in our February-like battle. All right, let's start with Trey Smith, the top offensive line free agent. He is the number 2 free agent according to ESPN. That's what that number will be on the bottom here. Guard from Kansas City. He is clearly the top interior offensive lineman on the open market. He is going to get a projected big contract in NFL free agency, and boy, does he deserve it. He did not have the most strong year for his standards this past season for Kansas City, but he has been a top 20 graded offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus in all 4 years of his career. As a rookie, doesn't matter. As a 4-year vet, doesn't matter. He is always top 20 according to PFF, but this is ironically one of his worst graded seasons, and he's still going to be able to cash in. The penalties is concerning a little bit, but he is great in pass protection. He is good in run blocking as well. There's a reason why he is the top free agent target on the interior offensive line. And I'm going to be honest, if the Dolphins sign Trey Smith in free agency, I would be doing jumping jacks. I would be through the roof. I would be ecstatic. It would be an absolute home run to get Trey Smith into the Dolphins organization, because then you would have a top offensive lineman at a guard spot for the first time in a long time. But the problem is he's going to get an absolute bag. He is going to get a massive contract, and I don't think, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, with the Dolphins cap situation being as bad as it is, that they are going to be able to create enough cap space to address other needs, as well as handing out a contract like this to Trey Smith, because PFF projects him getting a 4-year, $82 million deal. Would not shock me if it was the Robert Hunt deal, where they got a 5-year, $104 million deal on $20.5 million in annual average basis. He's going to have a lot of suitors as well. You look at some teams already linked to Trey Smith and will register interest in the offensive lineman. The Patriots, the Bears, the Jaguars, the Cardinals. What is all in common with these teams? Young quarterbacks that need to be protected, but they also all have a gazillion dollars in cap space. I mean, New England, unfortunate as it is, has about $130 million in cap space. So they can throw $23 million at Trey Smith and it not even really impact the way they build their team through free agency in the draft. The Patriots are going to be lining up at the front door for Smith. Chicago will do so as well. They have a bunch of cap space. The point is, I really like Trey Smith. I'd love to get him in Miami. But due to his contract and due to the demand he will have on the open market, I really don't believe that Miami will be able to sign him because of all those other teams willing to give him $20+ million. He would be my favorite free agent target if Miami had $50, $60 million already in cap space, but they don't. Let me know who your favorite free agent target is for the Miami Dolphins when free agency gets underway in about a month. My actual favorite is this man right here, Will Fries, the guard from the Indianapolis Colts, the 19th ranked free agent according to ESPN. He has been someone that we have talked about quite a bit in this offseason to this point. I'm a big fan of Will Fries. I've talked about him a lot. He was on my perfect offseason. He was on another video we talked about on how the Dolphins could create cap space and go out and sign an offensive guard. He got hurt this season early on, but he was on pace to put up a career year for the Indianapolis Colts. But he's been solid over the past 2 years as well, and you see how effective he was in his limited time as an Indianapolis Colt before he suffered that season-ending injury. And maybe that injury ultimately benefits Miami because he is very young, 25, 26, could have gotten a much larger contract like Trey Smith, but because of that injury, his contract might be actually a little bit lower. PFF projects him getting $14.3 million on an annual average basis over 4 seasons. This contract is much more affordable for the Miami Dolphins, and it's kind of where I want to live this offseason. When you're thinking about a guard that Miami can target and what they'd be willing to pay, I'm looking at 13, 15, 16 as probably the highest amount you can pay someone. Will Fries fits the mold, young, has been good in his career, but won't break the bank potentially because of that injury. Maybe that scares off Chris Grier due to the injury history, but I'm a big fan of Fries, and I think he would fit in perfectly at right guard for the Miami Dolphins. Another free agent target here, the 30th ranked guy on ESPN's list. Another offensive lineman, Mekhi Becton. He was an offensive tackle, first-round pick for the New York Jets, and didn't really work out with them. Signed a 1-year deal with Philadelphia this season, played right guard, and had his best season of his career. Been a huge part of that effective running game with Saquon Barkley. There is no surprise that the Eagles have the best offensive line. Now, you can argue that Mekhi Becton is the worst offensive lineman on that group when you look at Cam Jurgens, Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, but Becton was very good in his own right. And he is someone that could be very much more affordable than even a Will Fries. PFF projects him getting a 3-year, $27 million contract, obviously $9 million per season, but it is a little bit of a risk. And yes, it's cheaper than Fries and Trey Smith, but Becton was really, really bad for the Jets. He was not good when he was on the field, but he had a lengthy injury history, was constantly missing time, finally put together a full season. You saw he played over 900 snaps this season, which is the highest amount in his career. But I'm also very skeptical about him coming over to Miami and being as effective. Because, yeah, he was good, but I mentioned he was playing next to the best right tackle in football, Lane Johnson, and a first-ballot Hall of Famer. And then he played next to one of the best centers as well in Cam Jurgens. You get sandwiched in between those two guys, yeah, you're going to be very, very good with your numbers. Now, would he be able to be as effective with Austin Jackson at right tackle and Aaron Brewer at center? Brewer's a very good center. Austin Jackson's very up and down at right tackle. I just question if Becton would be as productive in a Dolphins uniform as he was this past season for Philadelphia. 3 more free agent targets that we're going to get to here in just a second, but we are sponsored by Game Time. And if you want to go see a live event, comedy show, concert, theater, sporting event in your local area, make sure you buy your tickets with Game Time. Game Time makes it so easy to purchase tickets because they have so many great features, one of them being Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. You also can use features like all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total price of your ticket up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They also give you a full panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you're able to see exactly where you'd be sitting when you go to any event of your choice. Make sure you join me and millions of people using Game Time on a daily basis, and they have a great deal for all the Dolphins fans right now. When you download the app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS. That gets you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only, but make sure you use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time, download the app, and get your tickets with them today. We're going to go in a little bit of a surprise direction with our 4th free agent target. It's actually a cornerback. Mike Hilton, the corner from Cincinnati, just 31 years old right now. He's actually the 34th ranked free agent on ESPN's top 50 list. And we kind of mentioned it a little bit last week on a video when talking about Kader Kohou on what the Dolphins should do in terms of re-signing him or not re-signing him. But nickel corner / slot corner, it's a sneaky need because Kohou is a free agent. Now, you could just re-sign Kader on a relatively cheap contract and, well, you're solved there. You've got Ramsey and Fuller on the outside again with Kohou on the inside, a secondary that was top 5 in the NFL this past season. Or maybe you move Jalen Ramsey to the slot and get an outside corner, or you sign Mike Hilton, who is the top slot corner in NFL free agency. He's been one of the best in all of football throughout his career as a Pittsburgh Steeler, as a Cincinnati Bengal. He's been very, very good. He was solid in coverage again this past season for Cincinnati. It wasn't his best season. There's no denying that, but it was still relatively good. But I'll also mention Mike Hilton is one of the most physical corners in the NFL. He consistently can get after the quarterback, blitzing from the slot. He did it really, really efficiently for Cincinnati. He's good in the run game for a corner as well. To me, I really truly do believe if you want to change the mojo of your secondary, not being able to tackle in the run game, Mike Hilton would be a good addition. Now, the one thing that is concerning with him is that he might be a little too pricey for Miami because of all of the needs at offensive line, backup quarterback, interior defensive line, and safety. You might not be able to allot $11 million per season to a third corner. Now, you have Kendall Fuller under contract for around that same money. Ramsey's obviously getting paid a lot. It'd be a very pricey secondary. Mike Hilton, one of the best corner and run defense corners there are. I would love to add him to Miami, but I think he's someone that might ultimately get passed up and not even thought of by Chris Grier because of this contract. I don't know if he'll actually get it, but that is the projection from Pro Football Focus. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, though, because with free agency a month away, we will have you covered throughout the entire process, who Miami is linked to, the latest rumors, news. When they make moves to create cap space, we'll have you covered as well. And when they sign people, we'll make videos and go live. Hit that sub button. Join us here at Dolphins Today. All right, we're going to head back to the offensive line here, and it's another guard, James Daniels from Pittsburgh. He was the 38th ranked free agent on ESPN's list. And out of the 4 guards that we've talked about to this point, Daniels would be the biggest gamble because he is coming off a pretty catastrophic injury as well. Torn Achilles, missed pretty much the entire 2024 season after playing about 200 snaps earlier on in the year. But the issue with Daniels is that he is actually much older than a Trey Smith, a Will Fries, and Mekhi Becton, and he has had a track record of not being good either. But he played extremely well in the limited time he was playing for Pittsburgh before that Achilles injury. I mean, his numbers are actually some of the best of the offensive linemen we showed, according to Pro Football Focus. Now, very limited snaps, there's no denying that, but he was fantastic for Pittsburgh, and it was a massive loss to their run game as well as their pass protection when he ultimately was lost for the season. But the reason why he could be much more of a better fit for Miami is because his projected contract, due to the Achilles injury and his age and track record, is much cheaper. 1 year, $5.5 million. So that would be something I'd expect Grier to really take a look at. Maybe they sign him to this contract. You take the risk. You also bring back maybe an Isaiah Wynn for depth, just in case Daniels gets hurt again or struggles. You still address offensive line on the interior in the first 2 or 3 rounds of the NFL draft as well. Daniels is an intriguing name that I think Dolphins fans should be ready to monitor. But I also am skeptical of the fit. With that injury, is he able to be that good in the zone, the pulling scheme that Mike McDaniel employs? That remains to be seen. We have one more free agent to talk about, but we did already talk about 4 offensive linemen in this video. Out of all of the offensive guards that we brought up, which one would you want to sign? Trey Smith, Will Fries, Mekhi Becton, or James Daniels? Let me know which one you would prefer the most, with contract being included in free agency. Type their initials. Last free agent target that we're going to talk about today, Justin Reed, the safety from Kansas City, just coming in here at number 43 on the top 50 list. I do want to make note real quickly. Javon Holland was on this top 50 list, but I didn't want to talk about someone that has already technically been a Miami Dolphin, and we know my thoughts on him as well. But Reed had a really good 2024 campaign for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's actually had a really good past couple of seasons in Kansas City as well. He's good in the run game. He has improved as a pass defender as well. Justin Reed is someone that I would expect Miami to heavily consider in NFL free agency. The one issue, though, I have is that he might ultimately outprice the Miami Dolphins. His projected contract by Pro Football Focus is 3 years, $46.5 million, 15.5 annual average basis. And the reason why that's a little scary is because, well, if you're paying him $15.5 million over 3 seasons, is Javon Holland that much more expensive? Is he really going to get $18, $19 million per season? I would still probably take Justin Reed at this price than Holland at 18 for 3 or 4 seasons. But maybe you just franchise tag Javon Holland at $17 million and figure out safety next season. I don't know. It's a little rich for me when you think about Justin Reed's contract. I like the player. I like the fit for Miami. But I don't think it would be the smartest move to give him a 3-year, $55 million contract. There's other safeties out there, not in the top 50 list, that would be much more closer to maybe 80, 90, like Andre Cisco, Julian Blackmon, 2 guys we've talked about in the past that you could probably get around $7 to $8, $9 million per season that I would much rather go after in free agency than a guy like Justin Reed. But I did want to mention one safety on this list out of the top 50 free agents. Make sure you are subscribed. Like I mentioned, when the Dolphins make moves, rumors come out, we will have you covered. So hit that sub button. Join us here at Dolphins Today because we will have a lot of fun things to talk about over the next month. So hit that sub button. All right, first segment in the books. I see a lot of people rocking with Will Fries. Some James Daniels, though, when talking about that offensive lineman list. I see Mark says Drew Dahlman. He's the center from the Falcons. Obviously, you have Aaron Brewer at center, but you're talking about maybe moving Dahlman to offensive guard. I'd consider it if he's coming at a relatively decent price. If you can get Drew Dahlman on a 3 for like 33 deal, that similar to that Mike Hilton contract that we showed, 3 for 33, 11 mil per season, to shift them over to offensive guard, I'd consider it. I'd consider the swing. Joel Embiid returning tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. That's good news for Miami. If you're a Heat fan, I cover the Heat because he will definitely not play a back-to-back, and the Heat play against Philly tomorrow. So you'd rather have Embiid return tonight than return tomorrow against Miami. That's good news for us. He'll definitely will not play on a back-to-back. You can guarantee that. Did I miss anything else here in the trade world? No. I don't know if they even got those food orders in. Let me check. Embiid makes you sick, says Wasim. That's funny. Every Noodle says loves Fries for long term, but wouldn't be mad at James Daniels for 1 year. Prove it. Yeah, I wouldn't be mad at James Daniels on 1 year either. But my only thing is with this is that I want the Dolphins to actually make a legit commitment to building their interior offensive line, right? So I'm thinking and I'm looking at guys to sign 2-3 year deals. I don't want a one and done. Now, if you sign James Daniels on a 1 year prove it and then draft an offensive guard at pick number 13, I can stand by it and say, like, all right, you have a rookie left tackle. you're in a rookie left guard or right guard. You're committing there. You have Brewer under contract for 2 years. You extended Austin Jackson. So it's like right guard's the only spot where you have a bridge guy right now. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But I do need the Dolphins, and this is not a want, this is a need, to make a long-term commitment, at least one offensive lineman on the interior. Whether it be drafting one or signing one to a 3-year plus deal. They need to make a legit long-term commitment on the interior offensive lineman, or on line. 2 players will be added on the interior offensive line to start. They need a new left guard and a right guard to start. One of those guys needs to be on a 3-year deal or a rookie deal and a high-end pick as well. That's kind of where I look there. One of them needs to be on a 3-year deal or more, longer, or you draft one in the top 50 at picks number 13 or 48. That's kind of my thinking there. Yeah, I agree. Every team has a cheap position somewhere. I actually said that last year, that not every roster is perfect. You're going to have cheap one-year guys somewhere. I'm just sick and tired of it being on the offensive line, though. It feels like it's been that for so long. I'm sick of that. I wouldn't hate doing cheap one-year safeties if you're not going to address. Even though I still want them to make a commitment. All right. With that being said, it is time to talk about some NFL draft. We just talked about free agency. ESPN released a 2-round NFL mock draft on Monday morning, and I want to talk about the 2 prospects that landed in Miami, react, give my thoughts. So let's do it. ESPN dropped a 2-round 2025 NFL mock draft earlier this week, and I wanted to react to the 2 prospects landing in Miami, and they will shock you. They're actually 2 players that I would not pick personally at those 2 respective slots. We'll break it all down. I'm Nic Rohloff from Dolphins Today, but make sure you do follow us on Instagram. At Dolphins Today IG is our handle. We will have you covered throughout the entire NFL draft process and on actual draft weekend with the YouTube channel, but also post short-form content, news, rumors on our Instagram. So if you want wall-to-wall 365 coverage on the Miami Dolphins, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following our Instagram at Dolphins Today IG. All right, let's jump right into it, because with the first pick that the Dolphins own in the draft, it's 13th overall, unless they trade up or down. Matt Miller of ESPN had the Dolphins drafting an offensive lineman, Armand Membou, the O-lineman from Missouri. And this is an intriguing name. He's very versatile. And I've actually been a fan of Membou for a while. If you actually can turn back the clocks, there is evidence that I liked Membou for quite a while. Because 3 months ago, the first ever mock draft I did for the Miami Dolphins, Dolphins Mock Draft 1.0. You see it right here 3 months ago. I had Armand Membou as a target for the Dolphins in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Now his stock has risen since I did this mock draft into potentially a round 1 pick. You also see Tyler Booker there in the 2nd and 3rd round. He's now potentially a first rounder as well. But Membou is someone that I've targeted as a good option for Miami all the way back in early November and October when the Dolphins were struggling. Matt Miller on Membou to Miami said that the Dolphins' main priority in 2025 should be giving quarterback Tua Tagovailoa more protection. Protecting from the inside out is crucial, and Miami has a hole at right guard. Well, they also do at left guard. Membou played right tackle at Mizzou and is an excellent mover in the run game at 6'4" and 332 pounds. Making him perfect for the Dolphins' run scheme. Some scouts believe he is the best pure tackle in the class, so kicking him outside in the future could be an option if current right tackle Austin Jackson leaves after his contract expires in 2 seasons. And Matt Miller was not lying. Membou has risen up boards as of late as potentially one of the top offensive linemen, if not the top offensive lineman. You see his PFF numbers from a year ago at Missouri. He was terrific. No sacks allowed. The grades are fantastic. And the reason why Membou is becoming such an intriguing prospect is that athleticism that he has displayed. And I will be fascinated to see what he does at the NFL Combine assuming that he goes through the 40 and all the other things, and he puts that athleticism even more on display. It might even elevate his stock in the NFL draft even more. But before we get into more surrounding Membou, just based off first glance, do you like the pick? Would you take Armand Membou, the offensive lineman from Missouri, at 13 overall? Type D if you would draft him, type P if you would pass. I said this 3 months ago when I talked about Armand Membou as a day 2 target for the Miami Dolphins, but his versatility makes him an intriguing target. He could play right guard. I think he could play left guard. He can play right tackle. Austin Jackson could kick inside the right guard if you wanted to play Membou at right tackle as well. So you would have a lot of different options on your offensive line if you ultimately picked Membou at number 13. And Matt Miller's point on the run scheme is exactly why I think the Dolphins will have him relatively high on their draft board, because his ability to get out in open space, get his hands on linebackers, on members of the secondary, is something that is valued quite a bit for Mike McDaniel. We see how many times they try to get to the perimeter using Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright. You need to have some athletic offensive linemen that can get to the second level quickly. I think Armand Membou fits that mold and would be a target for the Miami Dolphins in the NFL draft. But the reason why I would kind of stay away from this a little bit, I think right now, and things can change. Let's be honest. It's early February. We still got to go through the NFL Combine. We still got to go through meetings, visits, the whole 9 yards. But as things currently stand, for me, Armand Membou at 13 might be a little rich. I think it might be a little too high. Now, I'm going to continue to look at offensive linemen, do some film analysis, some scouting, reading up on these prospects. But as things currently stand, I think 13 is a little bit high for Membou. I like Will Campbell a lot more. There's some other offensive linemen that intrigue me, like Tyler Booker from Alabama as a pure offensive guard. Membou is a solid NFL draft prospect, but things stand right now, I'm holding off potentially on him at 13, but I have seen some people mock him as high as 10 or 11 to the Chicago Bears or San Francisco 49ers. And coming up in just a second, we are going to take a look at who the Dolphins had going to them in the second round of this ESPN mock draft. But I do got to give some major love to our sponsor on today's show that made this show possible, and that is Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform and app in North America. The big game is almost here. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is giving away a free pick as well, where all you need to do is pick more than on Patrick Mahomes, half a passing yard. And if you pair that up with one more stat projection and are correct, you can win real cash. Also, make sure to check out the promos tab to tell any of the Prize Picks Super Sweat Millie winners big game lineups. If you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you could win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Join me and millions of others playing Prize Picks on a daily basis. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. We're sticking in the trenches with the second round pick Miami has in the top 50, 48th overall. ESPN's Matt Miller had Miami selecting T.J. Sanders, the defensive lineman from South Carolina, someone who has really not popped up on my radar as a Dolphins draft target, at least at this point in the pre-draft process. But after looking at him, I could see why. Matt Miller said that losing Christian Wilkins in 2023 NFL free agency, 2024 free agency, hurt the Dolphins so that they get a replacement for him here. Sanders is a 3-technique pass rusher with awesome first step quickness and a similar build to Christian Wilkins at 6'4", 284 pounds. Interior defensive line is an underrated need for the Miami Dolphins. Last season, they had Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell, Benito Jones, Deshaun Ham as their rotation. But the reason why it is such a need for Miami in this offseason is because you simply don't have anybody on the roster right now. The only player under contract on the defensive line interiorly for the Miami Dolphins, I don't think that's a word, by the way, is Zach Sealer. Calais Campbell, free agent. Benito Jones, Deshaun Hand, all free agents. So you need to address the depth behind Sealer as well as that D lineman too next to Zach, either through the draft or NFL free agency. Now, there is a chance they go the cheap route in free agency, try to bring back Benito Jones, Deshaun Hand, and Calais Campbell, have the whole band back together for another year. And I actually wouldn't hate it. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, considering that they actually played much better than I would have expected them to do on the run game, that is. Pass rush could be better, but they were actually pretty solid in the run game. But we'll talk more about T.J. Sanders here in just a second. But I do want to get your thoughts. What's the biggest need for the Miami Dolphins? Is it getting more depth at defensive line? Is it the interior offensive line? Is it the safety room, who we didn't take any in the first 2 rounds of this ESPN mock draft? Let me know what the biggest need for the Miami Dolphins is down in the comment section. T.J. Sanders, he could certainly do it all. I think he is probably a better pass rusher on the interior than a run stopper, and that's kind of showcased by his frame, 6'4", 330, not as kind of big and as much as a run stuffer as you like. Excuse me, he's 284 pounds, by the way. So he's a little bit smaller, but he uses that quickness and athleticism to help get after the passer. Now, you could also bring Calais Campbell back, which would eliminate the need of drafting an interior defensive lineman maybe so high in the first 2 rounds. But with 10 overall picks, you're surely going to use some of them on the defensive line. And Campbell was so good last season. It's going to be fascinating to see what his market's like and if he would return to Miami, because he probably wants to win a Super Bowl if he does ultimately continue to play football and not retire. Sanders is an fascinating name. I'd also, if you think about it, I don't think they'll go defensive line in the first round of the draft, but there are a lot of good defensive tackles in this draft. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, both of those guys from Michigan. I would expect Kenneth Grant to be someone Miami potentially targets. 13 might be a little too high, but he's similar to Christian Wilkins in terms of his ability to be versatile in the run game, pass game, and be athletic. Just some names to keep an eye on here early in the NFL draft process. And you saw the title, and the title of this video is that Dolphins fans might be shocked by this mock draft. And I don't think that's misleading in a way, because these are 2 prospects that I don't think would be on a lot of Dolphins fans' radars for the first 2 picks in this draft, because there's other offensive linemen available that might be more highly touted. And T.J. Sanders is someone that we haven't talked about. I don't really love the value, to be honest, of this 2-round mock draft by Matt Miller. But there's a long way to go. Maybe these 2 guys rise in the draft process and are top targets by the Miami Dolphins. But I also want to make this abundantly clear as well. It's fun to talk about the draft and team needs and stuff like that. But NFL free agency dictates so much, because you see how the plan is, the process. Do they sign 2 offensive linemen on big deals? Well, if they do sign 2 interior offensive linemen on 2-3-year deals, you probably don't need to draft one at 13th overall. So NFL free agency really dictates where teams will go for the NFL draft. So you do have to stay subscribed and stay tuned, because when the Dolphins make a move, we'll have you covered with a video. So hit that sub button, because we'll have the best content all offseason long surrounding the Miami Dolphins. Two segments down. What's the biggest need for the Miami Dolphins? What is it? Let me know. I saw Steven says interior offensive line. Trenches, 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 trenches. Offensive line, offensive line. There's no doubt that offensive line either way are probably 2 of the biggest need, whether it's defense or offense. The trenches are certainly something that we need to talk about. Certainly needs to talk about. Excuse me. I'll check Twitter World. What's up, Twitter World? What's up, Twitter World? Who knows? Do you remember What's Up, Twitter World? Do you know who that's from? Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. What an all-time quote, man. What an all-time quote. What's up, Twitter world? Oh, I'm cracking up. Oh, good point. Good point. Justin saying that we need to start getting questions in. How many questions do we have? You know what? Let's count the super chat from Wasim because he did say cut Chubb, Trey Smith, Bears. So that is something we can talk about. And like, how many questions we got? So Wasim super chat and then one other normal question. All right, before we get into our third segment, our last segment will be a Q&A. I want to get the thoughts from the Dolphins fans and answer the questions here early in the offseason. So use hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat. You know what? Before we get into this next segment, I think we should get 3 questions. We could be at 5 questions at least. So if you have a question about a free agent target, a draft target, overall Miami Dolphins stuff, use hashtag Dolphins. Anthony's question that's already in. That's a good question. It's a good question. So use hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat. We'll wait to get some before we get into this next segment. Every Needle with a good question there. Talking about Mason Taylor. John with a great question. So there's 2. Let's get a couple more before we get into this next segment. Oh, shoot. John, that actually isn't going to pull because we need hashtag Dolphins. You did hashtag Dolphin. So, John, can you type that in the chat again and use hashtag Dolphins instead of Dolphin? Mark Smith with a question. It's a good question from Mark Smith as well. See if John re-inputs his question here. Hopefully he does because I think it's a good one. Cameron with a question. John with a question. There you go. Cameron C as well. So we got 6 total questions now, so we're cooking with gas. Continue to either use hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat if you want to get on the live show. But while you guys get more questions into the chat, let's talk about some big moves that Chris Grier could make to create cap space for the Miami Dolphins. It's in my water. You know what I like about this for some reason, by the way? It like starts orange on the left. Unless it's just the screen being miscolored on this left side. But on my screen, it like starts orange and fades in. I don't know if that's true or not. Okay. All right, let's get into the next segment here. Could the Miami Dolphins make a big move, and are multiple big moves coming soon? The Dolphins need to get more cap space in order to sign and draft this upcoming offseason, and we're going to be looking at some massive and major moves Chris Grier could ultimately look to make to create some cap space. And I mentioned that they need to. Yeah, right now they're in the negative, folks. They're $15.8 million into the red line, according to Spotrac. Now, over the cap has it at about 11.5, so who knows what the number actually is, but let's just say meet in the middle, and the Dolphins need to free up $12, $13 million to comply with NFL regulations, and that's just to be under the cap. They would then have to create more if they want to address roster needs in free agency and to have enough money to sign their NFL draft class, which they're currently projected to have 10 picks in the 2025 NFL draft. And it's also important to note what the biggest needs are for the Miami Dolphins. They need to completely overhaul 2 position rooms. Offensive guard, they need a new starting left guard, a new starting right guard this upcoming year. You might have to have a new complete safety room. You could bring back Javon Holland, but you still, as of right now, don't have a safety in the strong safety room or the free safety room. You also need to add a lot of interior defensive linemen, a backup quarterback, an off-ball linebacker too. So there's a lot of moves that need to be made and a lot of positions need to be addressed. So you need to make something happen. That's the moral of the story, right? With you being $15.8 million in the negative, according to Spotrac, you need to get back to the green, but also create another probably 25, 30, $40 million in cap space to sign free agents. It's going to be lofty for Miami, but there are some moves that the Dolphins can make, and I'm going to project what they could be, and the big ones, that is. But before we do that, help us out by spreading the word of Dolphins Today. This is a very informative video, by the way, of what moves could be made for the Miami Dolphins to create cap space. If you have a friend, family member, or just want to help us out by putting it on social media, click share, select Twitter/X icon, click post to Twitter/X. Would be greatly appreciated because more people need to know what the Dolphins need to do this offseason. The first big move that could be made, and is probably one of the most likely moves, now the Dolphins may elect not to do this, and I'll explain why later, but restructuring Tua Tagovailoa's contract. He obviously is going to be in the first year of that 4-year extension he signed with Miami past offseason, 4 for $212, $53 million per season. And you could create a pretty decent chunk of change of cap space if you do a max restructure of Tua Tagovailoa's contract. It would lower his cap hit from $39 million in 2025 to $20 million. You could save $19 million in cap space just by restructuring Tua's contract. You could also restructure Tyreek Hill's contract to get more money and add kind of more cap hits later on in the timeline to help you this season. But Tua's contract is one that is going to be talked about quite a bit. And I think this is an intriguing situation to look at, and we have the complete financial breakdown of cap hits for Tua. Now, dead cap and other guarantees are not included, but when you look specifically at the cap hits, the current contract for Tua is on the left-hand side. That's what his cap hit is going to be for the next 4 seasons in each respective year. But if you did that contract restructure I just mentioned, where you save $19 million in 2025, lower it from 39 to 20, it gets spread around over the next 4 seasons starting in 2026. You get a $4 million jump, $4.8 million to be exact, in 2026, another $4.8 million jump in 2027, another $4.8 jump in 2028 to make it a $70.6 million cap hit. And then in 2029, when he's technically not under contract anymore, like he was technically not on the roster, but he would carry an $11.1 million cap hit. That's kind of where the money comes to, right? It creates basically a void year where you tack on $4.8 million over the next 3 seasons, and then the other contract money that you save for 2025 is in 2029 when he might not be playing for you. So it's a kind of tough decision to make here if you're Miami. You could get out of the way the contract is currently constructed. You could get out of Tua's deal after 2026. You could. You could pay him 25, you could pay him 26, and then if you don't like what you've seen on the field, he's continuously getting hurt, you could move off of that roster with 2 years remaining, or move off the contract. But if you restructure that deal, it becomes pretty difficult to move off of him in 2 seasons when you have larger cap hits in 27, 28, and then $11 million hit in 29. It becomes more difficult if you restructure now. So it's really a tough decision that Miami's going to have to make on what they should do. Are you prioritizing trying to free up cap space now to win and build a roster for 25? Or are you going to provide and want and prioritize flexibility in 2-3 seasons if you do not want to keep Tua as your QB1? Very tough decisions, and I'm glad I don't have to be paid to make them. Well, let me ask you this. You saw the numbers on what the contract is now and what it could be and what the benefits are of restructuring Tua and the negatives. Would you restructure Tua's contract to get the $19 million in cap space now, but make it more difficult to move off of him in the future? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I said I don't want to be paid to make the decisions, and I'm glad because I actually probably am not going to restructure Tua's contract. maybe, and just maybe, you can revisit this conversation next offseason if you need to create more cap space. If Tua plays 17 games this next season, plays well, the Dolphins make the playoffs, and you're like, all right, I feel more confident about the direction this organization is heading with Tua, Mike McDaniel, and company. It was like, all right, then we'll restructure next season where you can create more cap space next year to address other needs and maybe add some void years. But as things are looking right now, I want that flexibility to potentially move off to his contract following the 2026 season. So it's a ballsy move to kind of sit and wait, but I'm probably holding off on a Tua contract restructure and finding other ways to create cap space, whether it's Tyreek Hill or maybe this one coming up here, trading Terron Armstead. Now, this is a tough one because he was so good for you in 2024. But he's getting old. He's got a big injury history, and you could save a pretty substantial amount of money if you traded Terron Armstead post June 1st, or he could also retire. Now, if he informed the Miami Dolphins that he was going to retire, you can designate that as a post June 1st retirement, which would give you a pretty decent amount of cap space, or you could trade him post June 1st as well. Or maybe you even just want to flat out release him, which would be kind of a ballsy move. But either way, here is what the exact situation is. And this would only happen post June 1st. If he does it beforehand, it really doesn't save Miami a lot of money. But a Terron Armstead trade or release post June 1st saves the Dolphins $15 million in cap space. So if you remember what we said earlier in the video, if $15.8 million in the red, you basically get back even by making this one move for Terron Armstead. And he was fantastic last season, man. He was. And it would be hard for me to watch him leave because after the Dolphins traded for Armstead, gave him that contract, I wanted him to finish out his career here. And he was so good. He's a warrior, man. He is an absolute warrior. And he was one of the top 5 left tackles in all football last season when playing on the field for Miami. The issue is that he's just so in and out of the lineup. And he played through a lot of injuries this past year. But he also battles so many injuries. He's had knee issues. He's had thigh, quad, back issues. It's been so many nagging injuries that it feels like his career could just 1 second snap and be over. And he contemplated retirement last offseason, ultimately came back. We'll see what he does now in terms of if he wants to play another year or not. That would force Miami's hand in terms of potentially releasing him or trading him post-June 1st. But Armstead's status for 2025 is one I'm certainly keeping my eye on quite a bit. And we'll talk more about Armstead in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time. Love Game Time. Whenever I go to a live event, the last event I was at was Mavericks Timberwolves basketball game on Christmas. Ironically, Luka Doncic's last game with the Dallas Mavericks. I use Game Time to buy those tickets because it's so easy to buy tickets on Game Time. Game Time Picks is a great feature. I used it because it curates a bunch of tickets to find the best value for your event, so you don't have to filter and search yourself to find the best seats. You also get a full seat view, panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and you also know that it's the lowest price. If you find a ticket on a different service that's a lower price ticket, Game Time will credit you 110% of the value because they know they guarantee the lowest price. They also have great customer service. If you're a procrastinator and buy your tickets, they specialize in last-minute tickets. Game Time is the easiest way and most assured way to buy your tickets. So join me by downloading the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS when you sign up to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, first purchase only, but create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I love Terron Armstead. I do. And I love the way he's battled for this Miami Dolphins organization over the past couple seasons. The thing is, you already planned for him to be replaced. You planned for this year to be the final season. So why not make that a reality? Whether he retires, whether you trade him post-June 1st, whether you cut him post-June 1st. That $15 million is so valuable to Miami right now where I think you have to do it. And, yeah, you have a lot of needs on this offensive line. got to fill left guard. You got to fill right guard. But the thing is, you used a very high value draft pick, top 55 last season, on an offensive tackle out of Houston, Patrick Paul. You did that for a reason, folks, right? You did it to be the long-term Armstead replacement because Paul is not going to move inside to play left guard or right guard. So are you planning on having a second-round pick sit behind Armstead another season? Are you moving Austin Jackson back to a guard spot and moving Paul to right tackle? Probably not, right? You probably plan on Paul being your left tackle, which is why I think either Armstead retires or Miami moves off of him to get that cap space. And make sure you are subscribed because when the Dolphins make roster moves, make decisions like maybe cutting Terron Armstead or drafting or signing players, we will have you covered. So hit that sub button and join us here at Dolphins Today. Now, as we look at what Patrick Paul did as a rookie, it wasn't perfect. I'm not going to claim that he had an unbelievable rookie year. He actually probably, for the most part, struggled, if you will. Pro Football Focus was not kind in terms of his grades. Now, he did kind of get the raw end of the stick because a couple of his starts came against really good teams, right? He had to play against the Houston Texans with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. That wasn't great. He had to play very early on in his career in Week 4 against the Tennessee Titans, battled against a pretty solid pass rush there with Jeffrey Simmons, Arden Key, and some other guys getting after the quarterback. But to me, Paul was always a developmental guy. He was never meant to come in, start right away in year one, and be an unbelievable offensive lineman. He just wasn't. Now, I do believe in his long-term ability. I believe that when he gets his hands on you, it's hard for you to get free because he's so strong, he's so long. As long as he continues to refine his technique, improve his footwork, I think he's going to be at least an average offensive tackle in the National Football League. It's time to let the young man play. It would be a misuse of assets to have him sit for another year behind Terron Armstead. So to me, trading Armstead post-June 1st or cutting him post-June 1st to save the $15 million is the best way to go about things. But maybe he just retires and takes the decision out of your hands. But either way, if you can get a 6th, 5th round pick for Terron Armstead, I'd absolutely do it. All right, let's move on to the final one on today's show, and that is Bradley Chubb. Could the Dolphins cut Bradley Chubb post-June 1st? I'm starting to think that it's more likely and that I would probably do it because he actually would save you the most money. A restructure of Tua, $19 million. Terron Armstead, $15 million. Bradley Chubb, if you trade him post-June 1st or cut him post-June 1st, saves you $19.5 million in cap space this season. Now, a trade post-June 1st becomes dicey because you obviously wouldn't be able to get that cap space for free agency. But if you release him and designate him for post-June 1st, you would get that right away. And I think that's probably the smart move. Unfortunately, Chubb is getting up there in age. He's coming off a catastrophic knee injury that had to deal with his MCL, ACL, LCL, and you just don't know and don't have the confidence that he's going to be able to return and be elite right away. And he's also had an injury history too. He missed a lot of time in 2021 due to injuries. He played 16 games in back-to-back years in 22-23 and was amazing for Miami in 23, where he had 11 sacks before that knee injury in Week 17 against the Baltimore Ravens. Bradley Chubb has been phenomenal in Miami. There's just no debating that. But he also, by the time would return for the Dolphins this upcoming fall, would have not played football for damn near 18 months. And you don't know how he's going to return from that knee injury. And with a cap hit of $29 million, there's just absolutely no way you can justify keeping him on this roster on that price tag. So you either have to restructure him to create cap space, or you have to release him post-June 1st to save $19 million. It's going to be a tough call, which is why I'm throwing it to you guys before I give you my official thoughts on it. Should the Dolphins cut Bradley Chubb post-June 1st to save $19 million? Type C for cut, type K for keep. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I am doing it. I really am. The $19 million is just too valuable. It really is. So, yes, I'm cutting Bradley Chubb. Because think about it. I know it would be tough, but if you were to hypothetically release Terron Armstead and Bradley Chubb as your 2 post June 1st 1 designations, you get 2. You do both of those guys. You cut both of them in the next 4 weeks. You designate it for post June 1st. You get the cap space now. That is $34 million in cap. You go from in the negative 15s to now you are at about $18.5, $19 million in cap space. You factor that in with other contract restructures to Tyreek Hill. Now you're talking closer to $30 million in cap space. Release Raheem Mostert, Durham Smythe, and some of these other guys like Jake Bailey that would not have a lot of tough cap hits and dead caps. Well, now you're talking $48 million. That starts to give you a chance to build out some of your roster in NFL free agency with good valued contracts, and you are able to sign your NFL draft class as well. It's not going to be easy for Chris Grier this offseason to manipulate cap to be able to add to this roster because there's a lot of spots that need to be added to, but those are 3 of the biggest moves that could happen. You do all 3, you're sitting here with $38 million. You restructure Tyreek Hill. Now you get to $50 million. You can get up to $55-60 million in cap space by doing contract restructures, post-June 1st releases. It will affect you in 3-4 seasons, but if you want to put a more competitive roster together in 2025, there is a pathway to do so. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because as news comes in around the Miami Dolphins, we will have you covered with live shows and videos every single day, so join the channel. All right, 3 segments down. Three segments down. 1 more to go. No problem, Tom. No problem. 1 segment left. It's a Q&A. Make sure you get your questions in. Hashtag Dolphins or Super Chat. How many questions we got, Justin? Is that including the Super Chat? Okay, so we got 9. So we're probably good to get things rolling, which I'm honestly probably just good to get into this here. That's fine. Just make sure if you make sure they're not like going all 3 back to back from that guy. Like you can put 1 in like the first third of the video, 1 in the middle third, 1 in the back half. And remember what I said last week as well. Shoot for anywhere between 12 or 15 minutes on this video. So like I said, if it's like 14 minutes in and there's still 2 questions left, don't have to answer all of them. Okay, that's fine. Just reading some up on some news. Interesting. DeAndre Hunter to Cleveland is a legit possibility. Dolphins says, can you put down the cup? Cooper Cup? I don't know what he's asking. He's talking about this cup? I don't know. I'm thirsty. All right. Either way, when you're ready, remember, intro, mailbag. Oh, yeah, to get that link then. All right. You make sure you get that Cooper Cup one in there because that would look nice on a title and thumbnail. That's only one. That's one of the few ones I'll have to. I'll do. All right, we're about to get into our final segment on today's live show. Justin's just going to get that super chat from Wasim. Ugh. Yeah, the studio's not great, but we didn't have a lot of options, unfortunately. Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of options. They can trade Hill for a ball of balls and a kicking tray. Certainly something. All right, we're about to get underway here in a second. Twitter cracks me up, man. Twitter cracks me up. Julio, that's a good question. It's got to use hashtag Dolphins. All right, folks. Justin's going to get ready here, and then we'll answer questions on the final segment of today's show. Appreciate everyone tuning in and hanging out. Good question. Good question. Also, try to get Julio on there. It's a good question. It's a great, great question. With the current safety market, if they decide to go after a bigger name in free agency, who do you think fits the defense the best? Hot dog, come on now. Serious questions only, hot dog. Serious questions only. Serious questions only. Julio Jones or Antonio Brown. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. All right. Let's do it. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Miami Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And on this Super Bowl Sunday, we are going to answer some questions about the Miami Dolphins. God damn it, because that's what matters the most, right? We're going to answer some of your questions on today's show. And we're going to start with Wasim Khan, who sent in a $10 super chat. Shout out to Wasim, saying this season flew by. It's up to the Eagles to save us from Kermit and mid-Taylor Swift. Now it's hockey basketball the next 3 months. But this is the last part that we wanted to talk about. It said Trey Smith's going to be a Bear, cut Bradley Chubb. So Trey Smith is on the Kansas City Chiefs, top interior offensive lineman in free agency. He is likely going to get paid higher than what Robert Hunt got last season from the Carolina Panthers. Remember, Hunt got 5 years, $100 million, leaving the Miami Dolphins. Trey Smith might not get 5 years, $104 million to top Hunt. But on annual average salary basis, yeah, he might get $20.5, $21 million to top Robert Hunt. That's a real possibility. And as good as a fit that Trey Smith would be in Miami for this Mike McDaniel scheme on the offensive line, and I'd love the Dolphins to invest in a big way on the offensive line interiorly, I don't think Trey Smith is ultimately going to be a Dolphin because of that contract. Seriously. He is going to command $20+ million in free agency. And with teams like the Chicago Bears, as Wasim points out, the New England Patriots, the Arizona Cardinals, that all have 50, 60, in New England's case, $130 million in cap space, they can throw these big-time contracts at free agents that just outbid everybody else. And for the team that Miami is, that doesn't have a lot of cap space and has a lot of needs in free agency to fill, I don't think they'll be able to allot $20+ million to Trey Smith. So I do think he's not an option for the Dolphins. But with the Bradley Chubb situation, we talked about it earlier in the week. Releasing Bradley Chubb post June 1st saves you $19.5 million. Even though Chubb's one heck of a ball player when fully healthy, we haven't seen him in 18 months when it will be the football season in 4 or 5 months. So I think saving the $19.5 million in cap space might ultimately be the best option for the Miami Dolphins. Anthony with a question going to the draft here. Thoughts on this mock draft? Trade down from 13, draft Shamar Stewart in the second round. We get Alfred Collins third round, Elijah Arroyo. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami, had one of the best Senior Bowls out of any NFL draft prospect. He was absolutely terrific. Dolphins do need to address tight end 2, potentially, in my opinion. Now, Julian Hill and Durham Smythe are both under contract, but Miami could easily cut them, save money, and then draft a tight end 2 to help Jonnu Smith in the NFL draft. In this mock, trading down, you would not get a first-round pick. Like, you have the 13th pick. Like, where does that go? Like, that's my question. Unless you're saying trade down in the second round to get multiple third-rounders. Maybe that's what you're saying. I like Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M as a defensive lineman. Probably wouldn't trade down from 13 to get him. Like, I think there just needs to be more details provided. Sorry, I do like Elijah Arroyo. Can't really talk about Alfred Collins too much, but Shamar Stewart's a pretty solid guy. Arroyo's a pretty big fan. I am of him as well in this draft. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. We're talking Miami Dolphins football every single day. And if any Dolphins news or rumors ultimately occurs, we will break it down on Twitter first before coming on YouTube and making a video. So if you want to be the most up-to-date Dolphins fan, subscribe, but also follow me at Nic_Rohloff. Julio coming in with a good question here. With the current safety market, if they decide to go after a bigger name in free agency, who do you think fits this defense the best? So when you think of the big-time, high-end free agent safeties, obviously Javon Holland is one of them. So if you're going to sign a big-time free agent safety, you might as well just sign the guy that you've had in your building as a homegrown talent. At that point, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Holland, I think that would probably what I would rather do. But guys like Justin Reed, Cam Bynum, those two guys, Bynum potentially getting $17 million per season, Justin Reed $15 million. I'll be curious to see what Hufanga from San Francisco gets coming off injury. Could he get a $15 million contract? Those are some of the biggest names out there. Trayvon Morig from the Raiders is a potential candidate for 13, 14, 15 million. If you had to ask me which one fits the best, I would probably like to bring in Justin Reed if you're talking exterior free agents, but I also wouldn't want to give him 15 mil per season. When I'm thinking safety room, Julio, I'm thinking drafts, whether you go Malachi Starks, Nick Amanwari from South Carolina, Xavier Watts, Kevin Winston, Sebastian Castro. I would draft one of those 5 and sign a low-end, mid-tier safety like Julian Blackmon or Andre Sisco, who you could probably get on both 3-year deals around $7, $8, $9, $10 million for those two. That's probably where I would go with the safety room. I'm not going on one of the high-end safeties. There's just other needs on the offensive line that I would rather address. Cameron coming in with a question. Besides Andy Dalton and Marcus Mariota, what other backup quarterbacks pops out at you on tape? Cameron, another good question here. Dalton is someone that I'm very intrigued with. I like Andy Dalton a lot. I know you said other than Andy Dalton, but he's probably my number one choice for a 1-year, $5 million backup quarterback job this year. But when I'm thinking of the other quarterbacks, I actually do sneaky like Mac Jones. I do. I know it's kind of crazy to say that. Doesn't have the strongest arm. He's very similar to Tua in a way of when he's at his best, he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He was at his best at Alabama running an RPO scheme. The Dolphins do a lot of RPOs, quick throws to the flat, quick throws to the slants, the over the middle. Mac is an interesting name to monitor, and if you could get him cheap, I think he would be a good fit in Miami. So that's another quarterback that pops out on tape. You also know that he has starting experience, for better or for worse, where you wouldn't feel absolutely horrid if he had to start 1 or 2 games or come in the second half. Also mentioned Joe Flacco, as always. Flacco's an intriguing name. He could have been a Dolphin, but Miami didn't want to fork up the money this past offseason. We'll see if Flacco can spin the block potentially with Miami here. But if you're not talking Dalton and Mariota, I like the idea of potentially Mac Jones and Joe Flacco being options for Miami. Who is your favorite free agent target for the Miami Dolphins? I assume that you guys aren't going to answer with a backup quarterback, but maybe it's Trey Smith. Maybe it's one of those safeties we mentioned earlier. Maybe it's an offensive lineman. Let me know your favorite free agent target for the Miami Dolphins down in the comments section. Hot Dog with the question said Cooper Kupp. And I know the question isn't really asked here, but he did say in our live chat that he was wondering about a Cooper Kupp trade, as it was reported earlier this week by Cooper Kupp himself and others that the Rams are looking to trade Kupp this offseason. Now, I'm staying away. And I know a lot of fans might be intrigued with the idea of bringing in Kupp to be your wide receiver 3 because a Kupp, Waddle, and Hill trio would just be unbelievable. But Kupp, 32 years old, he has injury history. He's making $20+ million. It just doesn't make sense for the Miami Dolphins to pull the trigger on this move. You'd get him for very, very cheap, probably a day 3 pick, 4th, 5th rounder, maybe at best, because of that contract and age, and he showed a lot of decline this past season for Los Angeles. But Miami, I don't think could make it work financially. I know that there was a rumor out there that the Rams would be willing to eat some of the salary to facilitate a trade. So maybe if the Dolphins would only have to pay him like $7-8 million at max, and the Rams ate up most of that, I would be in, but that would also require Miami to send a higher draft pick. I just don't think it's a good use of resources in terms of trading a pick as well as allotting that into your cap situation for this year. There's no denying that a trade would be fun and have him be in your slot with Hill and Waddle on the outside, but with other needs at safety, offensive line, and on the defense, I don't think the Dolphins should be looking into a Cooper Kupp trade. We got more questions to answer here, but I do got to give some love to our sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Make sure you sign up today and take advantage of their free entry for the big game later this afternoon, or if you're watching this after the big game, hopefully you did take advantage, because they are offering a very nice entry. All you need is to have more than half a yard on Patrick Mahomes passing. I think that's going to happen. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. PrizePicks, the best way to get on sports action. It's legal in more than 30 states, including Florida, Georgia, Texas, and California. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Join me and the millions of others on PrizePicks right now. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Links in the description and comments of today's video. PrizePicks, run your game. Every Noodle with a question. How about bringing a Hall of Fame name back to the 305, nephew of Hall of Famer Zach Thomas, son of Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, which is the tight end Mason Taylor. Bring the Taylor name back to Miami. Funny you mention this, Every Noodle. If you watched a video we put out probably a week and a half ago at this point about Dolphins draft targets after the Senior Bowl. Actually, I lied. It was exactly 1 week ago. We did it last Sunday. I talked about Mason Taylor, how the Dolphins met with Taylor at the Senior Bowl. Taylor is the most productive tight end in LSU history. Yes, you heard that correctly. He has the most receptions and reception yards for an LSU tight end. He is a good blocker. He's physical. He's got good size. I would love Mason Taylor. Now, he is likely going to be a day 2 pick, whether it's the 2nd round or 3rd round. And we'll see how free agency shakes out. We'll see how the draft shakes out early on. But if you're telling me Mason Taylor's on the board at pick 48, I'd think about it. If he's there in the mid-3rd round or pick 98 where the Dolphins are projected to have a comp pick, I'm absolutely in. Had over 500 yards this past season as an LSU Tiger. I would love to bring Mason Taylor into this room to be tight end 2 and maybe tight end 1 after Jonnu Smith's contract runs out, because Smith is under contract just for 1 more season. Make sure you are subscribed, because we will have you covered the entire offseason, free agency, draft, news, roster moves. We'll have you covered. Hit that sub button and join the channel today for the best coverage on YouTube surrounding the Miami Dolphins. We'll also have to ask you this, too, because the big game is later today. Who are you rooting for? Are you rocking with the Chiefs? Are you rocking with the Eagles? Let me know your thoughts on who you are rooting for in today's game. Should be a fun one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Mark Smith with a question here. Is there any chance Mike McDaniel will give up play calling, at least in a certain down and distance? Well, no, because if you're asking if he should give up play calling in general, maybe we could have a conversation about that. But if you're asking give up play calling in certain situations, that's just chaotic, man. Trying to have a different play caller for 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3 in comparison to 1st and 10 makes no sense. Now, could he give up play calling? I said that he should. I think he's a good offensive mind, but I think if he wants to be the best head coach, he can have a say in offensive scheme and the game plan on a week-to-week basis. But why would the Dolphins want him to, or why would Mike McDaniel want, or let's just rephrase this. Mike McDaniel should want to be better as a head coach. And I think we've seen that it could be helpful to take a little bit off of his plate. So giving Frank Smith a shot as a play caller. Maybe Darrell Bevell, who's been an offensive coordinator for the past 15 years before joining the Dolphins coaching staff. I think Mike McDaniel should absolutely consider giving up play calling, but doing it in certain down and distances, yeah, that's not going to happen. All right, that will do it for today's episode. Appreciate everyone for tuning in on Super Bowl Sunday. Enjoy the game. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, because we're posting multiple content pieces over there surrounding the Dolphins as well as YouTube. So make sure you give us a follow on all social media platforms. Dolphins Today on IG, at Nic_Rohloff on Twitter. Go give us a follow today. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Uh-oh. The Suns downgraded Kevin Durant to doubtful with an ankle injury. Uh-oh. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, if no one has a super chat here to come in right now, ask a question, help us stay live, we're going to sign off. I do have to get prepared for my Heat Bulls watch party late tonight. So, if no super chat comes in, we'll have to sign off. We'll give it about 30 seconds. What's up, Poe? Good to see you, my friend. Sorry for you tuning in and then us tuning out or having to head out, but appreciate you taking the time to step in for a second. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Shout out to Justin, second ever live show producing. As you get more and more comfortable, we're going to have to work you in on camera and mic, but good work again here, Justin. Appreciate everyone for hanging out, and we'll see you guys. Yeah, we'll be live next Tuesday. Well, we won't be live like the 19th or 20th of February, but we'll be live next Tuesday. Appreciate it. See you guys. Have fun.